During this session, we will be looking at research methods. We will be focusing on the distinction between primary, secondary, quantitative and qualitative data, different quantitative and qualitative research methods, theoretical, ethical and practical considerations influencing the choice of research topic and methods. Okay, let's begin. I want to start this session by introducing two very important concepts. Validity. This is a measure of whether a study provides a true reflection of social reality. Reliability refers to the concept that research can be replicated in the future and have the same results. As sociologists, we are concerned with researching social life, and in order to achieve this, we must always ask ourselves whether what we are researching is both valid and reliable. We are now going to begin looking at different types of research methods used by sociologists. As we do this, it is important that you ask yourself this question: is the method valid and reliable? And if not, how can it become so? Let's begin by looking at primary and secondary research. What I would like you to do now is pause and draw a chart just like this. I'll start to explain the chart, and then you can carry on filling in the chart by yourself using the information as we progress. As I talk about different types of research, try and put each type under primary or secondary. Remember, some types of research could fit into both. As we can see looking at the diagram, primary research is directly from the horse's mouth. It is data which is collected by the researcher directly and not from someone else. Examples we can see here are participant observations, surveys and interviews. The key point is that the information applied is gathered by the researcher. Secondary research is data that is made up of information that already exists and has been created and collated by someone else. Examples include statistics, diaries, historical documents, and so on. Next, let's look at qualitative and quantitative research. Now, I realise that qualitative and quantitative are tongue twisters to say and remember. However, the clue to remembering which is in the words themselves. Qualitative research refers to the quality of research. Some sociologists, particularly interpretivists, feel this is only really found in research that presents the findings in the words of their subjects. The information is directly from the subject, but interpreted by the sociologist to create meaning in relation to the social action. Max Weber stated sociologists can only understand social action if they listen to the actors themselves and understand their motives for acting in a certain way. Quantitative research refers to information produced in quantity, such as government statistics, graphs, or information gathered in a standardized form. Sociologists who are positivists believe that quantitative information is factual and the only objective way of analysing human behaviour. They believe there are social facts that exist which form the framework of human interaction. Important point to note: both of these methods can be used in a study. An example of this is Durkheim in his study of suicide. The disadvantages of quantitative research can include using statistical information limits your questions to the information itself, and validity, a true picture of social reality, is difficult to see. Remember, quantitative data is numerical and qualitative data is descriptive. Let's look at some of the methods used by sociologists. Don't forget to think about validity and reliability of these. The methods we're going to look at are observations, surveys, interviews, official statistics, historical data, and triangulation. Sociologists use 4 types of observations. These are participant observation, non-participant observations, covert observations, overt observations. Participant observations. This is when the researcher participates with the group they are researching. For example, a researcher calling himself James Patrick conducted a participant observation on a Glasgow gang. He took part in the gang's activities, even though much of their behaviour was illegal and violent. This covert research enables the sociologist to get a true picture of what is going on and helps to maintain their personal safety. Bill White attempted to present a realistic account of the life of gang members in a poor Italian slum called Cornerville. He initially attempted to conduct a quantitative approach rather than a qualitative one, but soon realised that door-to-door surveys were not going to give him any real insight. So, a new approach was decided: participant observation. Here was a method he felt could really give him a deeper insight into their lives. However, he did encounter some problems. First of all, he was an upper-middle-class American, so it was difficult for him to be accepted by the community. Eventually, he was introduced by a social worker to a gang member called Doc, who introduced him to all the other members of the gang. White was guided by Doc on how to ask questions and get on with the gang members. One of the problems White encountered was that he became too involved with the gang and moved from being an overt observer to a non-observing participant. The information that White obtained gave a good insight into the gang's lives. However, he did make certain gang members too self-conscious and influenced their behaviour because the study was overt rather than covert. To be accepted, he also became involved with illegal acts, which suggests his objectivity could have been questioned. Next, we have non-participant observations. Here, the researcher is merely an observer of the group and does not take part in any of their activities. An example of this is Humphrey. He conducted a non-participant observation study on the tea room trade, i.e., he observed the behaviour of gay men who frequented toilets for sex. Covert observations. A covert study is when the group being observed are not aware they are. For example, the men in Humphrey's and Patrick's studies were not aware they were being observed. This would have the advantage over overt observations, because if the community don't know you're conducting a study, you may influence them less. However, there would be ethical problems with doing this type of study nowadays, and professional guidelines to be observed. Also, we have had the introduction of the Human Rights Act 1998, which protects the right to family life and privacy. Overt observations. An overt study is when the researcher is open with the group about their research and the group are aware of the research topic. For example, White conducted a study on street corner kids who were all aware they were being researched. Longitudinal research. This form of research is, as the name suggests, conducted over a long length of time, sometimes over many years. These began as extended attitude surveys and tend to be used to collect quantitative data over a long period of time. An example of this is J.W.B. Douglas in All Our Future, where he looked at the educational development of school children. Longitudinal research can also be used for qualitative research. Social surveys. This is where standardised information is gathered on large amounts of people through the use of questionnaires. According to Ackroyd and Hughes, the information can be descriptive, attitude-based, or explanatory. Okay, to find out more about interviews, let's go over to Will. Hello? Okay, there seems to be a small problem. No, we've got him now. Okay, over to you, Will.
Now, we're just going to talk a little bit about interviews now. I've got a sociology expert here with me, Dave Angus. Dave, can you talk to me a little bit about the different types of interviews? I know there are loads of different types.
Yes, well, sociologists conduct three main types of interviews. There are structured, semi-structured and unstructured interviews. Now, a structured interview has preset questions and an interval schedule. Now, the researcher must not deviate from these.
What is the advantage of this method?
Well, the interviews are standardised so that each participant will have the same experience, and therefore this will reduce interview bias.
Right. What is interview bias?
Well, this is where the researcher can influence the participants' answers. They're not always aware of doing so, but their behaviour or their body language can impact on the interviewee's answers.
Are there any disadvantages to using structured interviews?
Yes, because the sociologists are not able to ask any additional questions, and therefore they won't get any surplus information. By that I mean the researcher will only get information based on their questions. Sometimes in research, the sociologist will get information on the group being researched that they hadn't considered at all. This extra or additional information can provide us with greater perspective, much greater perspective of their behaviour.
I see. Can you tell me a little bit about semi-structured interviews?
Yes, this is where the researcher will have a list, again, of preset questions, but they're able to deviate from these questions sometimes and ask additional questions.
What's the point of that?
Well, it allows the researcher to ask set questions so that the research aims are being met, but they're also able to develop questions around the answers that they receive from these. This enables them to gather any surplus information.
How about unstructured interviews?
Well, here, there are just no set questions at all. Feminists who argue that it reduces the power relationship between researcher and researched favour this method. For example, Oakley used this method for her research on domestic labour. She saw the research as a collaboration between her and the women that she was interviewing, she was studying. They were able to ask her questions as well. This allowed her to gain a rich source of qualitative data and surplus information. However, when analysing the information, it was very time-consuming, as you can imagine, because there was hours of interview tape to listen to and to research from.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me, Dave. You've been most helpful.
Pleasure.
Now back over to you.
Thanks, Will. Official statistics are considered a reliable source of information by some sociologists. They are secondary quantitative data and are produced by the government. An example of official statistics would be the British Crime Survey. As you can see, official statistics provide us with a large source of numerical or quantitative data. Let's have a look at a case study of when official statistics have been used in sociology. Durkheim was a functionalist sociologist. He believed sociology should aim to be as close to the natural sciences as possible, and that sociologists should always use quantitative methods. His research on suicide has been credited as being the closest to the natural sciences. Although Durkheim's study was clearly based on quantitative methods, sociologists such as Douglas suggested Durkheim went beyond just concluding on social facts. Douglas points out he painted an interpretive picture of what it is actually like to be a Protestant or Roman Catholic. When researching suicide, Durkheim used official statistics and was able to compare suicide rates in different countries. Okay, let's have a look at the benefits and disadvantages of using official statistics in sociology. Apart from the value judgments on the reliability of the data collected, there are also practical constraints. These include time, funding, and accessibility to the subject matter. If funding is an issue, using statistics will be cheaper because the data will already be gathered. An evaluation table like this one will help you learn and work out the benefits and disadvantages of both. Why don't you pause, copy the table down and fill in the gaps regarding the other research methods? Historical data. As pointed out earlier, historical data is secondary research. This could be in the form of historical documents, for example, novels and literature from different time periods, diaries, white papers, and so on. There are the obvious advantages to this, such as a deeper insight into a particular time. For example, Dickens has been termed by some as one of the first social commentators. Samuel Pepys' diaries give invaluable information about the Fire of London and social conditions. However, there are some important drawbacks to note. Representation. How representative are they really? They may be based on a small area and as such may not be representative of the whole of society, such as Anderson's research using census statistics on the family. Interpretation. In the case of historical novels or diaries, how realistic is interpretation of the author of the social conditions of that period? The reality they saw could be different from the actual reality or a biased version. For example, when looking at Jane Austen novels, we will be examining the period through the eyes of one social class. As with all methods of research, there are advantages and disadvantages, but sometimes one can outweigh the other. Triangulation. This is the combining of qualitative and quantitative methodology. One method is used as the base of the research, and then the other is used to back up or create greater insight. Qualitative research can act as a catalyst for a hypothesis, or data from either qualitative or quantitative can be used to check on the validity of the other. Okay, let's see how you get on with this quiz.